Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bigos Silvio show, where we talk about politics in the 21st century. I'm Joey Bigos.
And I'm Richard Silvio.
And tonight, we have the honor of having a very, very special guest on our show tonight, former U.S. Senate candidate Kevin O'Connor. And we are excited to have him on. But before we jump into things with Kevin, we are going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Never gets old.
Never.
So, Kevin, hello. It's great to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, Kevin, before we get into things, how have you been since the election? I know that, unfortunately, you did not win, which is a shame, for all Republicans in the state. So how have you been handling that?
Well, it's tough losing. I didn't get into it to lose. I knew it was an uphill fight, and I really enjoyed it. I loved meeting people. I think it was a very important year, and these are important times for our country. So I'm doing fine. I'm in good health, and this is 2020 has been a really tough year for a lot of families. The O'Connor family, relative to a lot of families around the country and around the world, is doing great. So I feel very blessed.
It's wonderful, Kevin. It's great to, have you on the show, and that we're going to talk to you and get into some important issues. So, let's just dive right in.
Right. Jumping right in, Kevin, to climate, some of the big issues revolving around climate change. Referring back to the debate between you and Senator Markey, you said you did not support a Green New Deal. Can you explain why you are so against the New Deal, and what is something we could do to discuss and achieve fixing some of these problems within the climate and the environment?
Yeah, so I believe that climate change is a real problem, and I think that man contributes to it. And I consider myself an environmentalist. I think it's critical for any senator to be a steward of our planet and to make sure that we pass on a cleaner planet than the one we inherit, and that involves clean air, clean water, climate, everything. I don't approve of the Green New Deal, because if you read the actual document, it's sort of a utopian plan that doesn't have any budgets. It doesn't have any realistic objectives associated with it, meaning that it talks about each industry being carbon free within 10 years. And that's just not technologically feasible across a variety of industries. So it sets these unrealistic goals. It talks a lot about things that are not related to climate, such as reduction of the defense budget by 50%, a guaranteed federal job for every American, which would have hugely distortive effects on our labor markets, free college for everyone. So it's really it's a much broader social program that was written, as I understand it, and I'm basing this on the statement of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's former chief of staff, a man named Saikat Chakrabarty. But what he said was that the plan originally was a Reshape the American Economy plan that was essentially rebranded as the Green New Deal, because the perception was that would make it more palatable for young people. So if you look at the substance of the plan, it's a bad plan. I want to address climate change. I think we can do it purposefully and globally, and I think we can strive realistically for carbon neutrality.
Right. And another thing, too, I noticed with the Green New Deal is the experts themselves said it would cost not just billions, but trillions of dollars.
Oh, we might be having some technical difficulties real quick, so just one moment, everybody.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, now we
Can you hear
can.
me?
Yes.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Yes.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, can you hear us?
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. So should we pick up? Yes.
I think we're having some
Yes.
Chinese government interference. Hello?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Wonderful. There you go.
So what I was saying was, I agree with your statement on the Green New Deal. You have, radical people like AOC and Senator Markey trying to pass something like that. And experts themselves openly admit that the deals would not just cost billions, but trillions of dollars.
Oh, yeah, massive. I mean, trillions, and there's no plan to pay for it within the Green New Deal. It would have devastating effects on our economy. It would require massive tax increases. It actually proposes that we use renewable energy only renewable energy for all purposes, and that's just not feasible within the next 10 years. Right now, the United States is using between 5 and 10% of its energy it's using renewable energy for about 5 to 10% of our supply, and it's not realistic that we'll get to 100%. And renewable energy right now, because of storage capacity limitations, is limited for use when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing or the rivers are running hard. So we have a long way to go technologically. We should be striving to achieve a carbon neutral future, and I think we can do it if we're purposeful about and really focus federal resources on research and development. But it's not something that's going to happen in the next 10 years.
Personally, Kevin, I agree with you. I feel like that's one of the problems we have, nowadays, especially with the youth, is, they hear ideas, but they, like you said, people don't tend to read the content of what they're actually signing into and what they're agreeing to. But to continue with climate, in our second episode when we discussed this topic, we delved into clean coal, as being an option for a renewable energy source. How do you feel about the clean coal industry?
Well, if it's clean, the only question is it clean? And right now, natural gas has been a very good step for us to reduce our carbon output. The United States is actually making good progress in terms of reducing its carbon output. So whether it can be achieved with clean coal or not, I don't know. I wouldn't rule out coal categorically, but it has some hurdles. And the reality is that countries like China and India are deploying coal factories that are not close to carbon neutral. So we're going to need a global solution to this problem if we're going to address it on a timely basis.
I agree with you completely, Kevin, with the whole natural gas stance. I feel like that's something a lot of people, unfortunately aren't looking towards because of the stigma, that comes with fossil fuels and things of that nature. But to move away from climate, we'd like to move on to foreign affairs, specifically with the election. So a lot of people have been discussing, the integrity of the election, especially the 2020 presidential race. How do you feel about the outcome of this election?
In terms of, I voted Republican, so it wasn't what I wanted in terms of the outcome. I think in terms of the challenges, I believe that we have a winner at this point. The legal challenges can continue. There's a case that's been brought before the Supreme Court that I think will not be successful. It basically challenges the way 4 swing states ran their elections, and I don't think they'll have legal standing, and I don't think they'll be successful. So I think we will have to transition ultimately to the reality that there will be a Biden administration.
So just quickly
and the critical things for us going forward, I believe, are winning the Senate seats in Georgia.
I agree, and obviously the focus right now is on Loeffler and David Perdue in the runoff election, I believe, which is in January.
I believe.
But you know what it is? I genuinely feel like there is some fraud, and I don't feel as if President Trump is trying to, he would like to overturn the election, but I think he's trying to look out for future elections, and that's where I think people don't understand quite enough.
Well, we always need to be looking out for future elections. So that's not something that stops with 2020. And I think there were a lot of changes that were made this year because of COVID-19. And some of them, I think, were not well advised. But they were rules as a general matter that were passed by state legislatures who were the elected representatives of the people. They were signed by governors. I think that some election administrators may have not applied the law exactly as written, but I don't think in the end that that's an issue that will be resolved by the courts. I think that that's something that voters can, if voters believe in their state that the election wasn't run fairly, then they can vote in the next election to choose people who will deliver better performance.
Right.
But the court challenges right now, I don't believe that there is a case out there where the president or his campaign can say, we lost a number of votes that is greater than the margin of error or the margin of victory for Vice President Biden in any given state. And given that they can't link up exactly, they can't prove that case, that these are the votes that were improperly filed. When you remove those, you change the outcome. Given that they can't prove that, I believe that it's decided that President Biden will be the president of the United States. I don't favor an approach where state legislatures overrule or disregard the votes in any of the states.
Kevin, I completely agree with you that, we need to be looking out for the future because, after all, the future is never more than a day away.
Right.
But just, one more thing with the election, just to make it clear, you do not feel that there was any sort of foreign interference within this election?
I don't have any basis to say that there was. I think that we have to be ready for foreign interference in every election. People have been interfering with elections for decades. So that if that's ultimately revealed, then obviously we have to address it. But I'm not aware of anything in this year that affected the outcome, and that's a good thing. But
I applaud you, Kevin, on your. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, if we learn of it, we have to punish it. And we have to have zero tolerance for interference with elections, whether that's from foreign countries or whether that's from American citizens. The bedrock of our democracy is faith on the part of voters that the system is fundamentally fair. It may not be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. Any organization where you have that 150 million transactions, there will be errors, there will be abuse. But the question is, overall, was the system basically fair? And I believe it was in Massachusetts, and I haven't seen any case where the people who want to change the outcome have had any success. And it's really important to note that the decisions that have been made across the country in these courts have been made by judges who are federal court appointees and state court appointees. And many of them were appointed by Republican presidents or Republican governors. Our system is very decentralized at the court case level, but the results keep coming back the same way. And that it's good that the system is decentralized, and people should take comfort in the fact that the results keep coming back the same way, regardless of whether it's a Republican appointee or a Democratic appointee. Doesn't mean I agree with every decision, but overall, I believe that this election has been decided, and that Vice President Biden will be the next president of the United States.
Right. Now, kind of talking about like foreign interference, voter fraud, do you think that they should do away with the Electoral College, or do you think they should try and reform it so it's more fair?
I think it's fair. I think that's the deal that we have. And I think this year illustrates the importance of the Electoral College. If we didn't have an Electoral College, then misconduct in, say, Rhode Island could undo the entire country's election. By having an Electoral College and by allowing the states to run their elections, we have a decentralized system so that to the extent there's a problem in any given state, it's contained within that state. And I think that decentralized system is also the best way of making sure that if there's an election machine type of issue, there's 50 different states that can catch it. There's all there's Republicans who can catch it, Democrats, people at all different, at the local level, at the county level, at the state level. So the distribution of that responsibility across parties, across different levels of government, and across the country should give us comfort that if there was systematic misconduct, that it would be caught. For example, if the machines were tampered with, somewhere in the 50 states, someone would be able to offer proof that that had happened. And I don't think they've been able to offer that proof.
You know, I agree with you completely, Kevin. And before we close off on this, I just wanted to say that I applaud you in your cautious stance with calling out, voter interference, which we've been seeing a lot, throughout all 50 states. And I applaud you on accepting the results and looking towards the future.
And as with all cases, the presumption is that it was done fairly. So if you have proof that it wasn't done fairly and that laws were violated, then you offer that proof. And I'm not saying that there wasn't misconduct in this election. There was this year. There has been for eons in American history. There's been misconduct, but on balance, the Republican states and the Democratic states, or states controlled by Republican governors and Democratic governors, have certified the election results. And that tells you that on balance, those elections were substantially fair. Doesn't mean they were perfect, but they are certifiable results. And we have to, I believe, accept those results and move forward. If people come up with evidence down the road, then if we have to go there, we have to explore that. But right now, we need to make sure we have a president ready to go on January 20th.
I agree. I agree with you. Moving a little away from the election, I guess another foreign threat question I have for you is, socialism, okay? Advocates more like Bernie Sanders, AOC, people considered to be maybe extremists when it comes to socialistic ideas. Do you think a socialistic leader is ideal for this country, or why not?
No, I don't. Socialism has proven to be a failure everywhere it's been tried, from Venezuela to the Soviet Union, and countries around the world. So I don't favor it. I am not attacking the motives of anyone, but I think it is a system that has been proven to be misguided, ineffective. We need limited government. We need the government to provide basic things like schools, roads, infrastructure, and then allow people to freely associate and to create and to innovate. That's the path to the brightest future for the American people. Freedom and individual ingenuity, not government control. And there really isn't an example of a state where of a country where the government took over the economy and then ultimately didn't impede the individual rights of people. President Jefferson, I believe, once said that a government that can give you everything can take everything away, and I believe that.
I agree, and by all means, the freedom of every single American should be protected. We're going to jump into COVID-19. Big issue going on. And from my understanding, I know it's affected you within your family very much. And Richard's going to start off with the first question he has for you.
Yes, before I get into that, Kevin, how have you guys been handling COVID? I'm sorry, I heard about it, like Joey said, affecting your family. Are you guys all right?
Well, thank you for asking. My dad had COVID-19 in April, and he got through it after 9 days in the hospital. And then one of my cousins, who lived in New Jersey, passed away. So it's affected our family. But we're considering all that. We're fine. and everybody's in good health right now.
We just want to offer our condolences for your
Absolutely.
cousin, and I saw the videos that when you talked about your father having it, and he must be a pretty strong guy to be able to get through something like that. So I praise your father on that.
Absolutely. God bless.
Thank you. He's about to turn 87.
God bless him. God bless
absolutely.
your father.
Former Marine. He's a tough dude. I was at the doctor's with him yesterday for another type of appointment, and I'm going over to see him tonight after we're done.
When you see him, make sure you tell him I said thank you for his service for our country.
Absolutely. God bless him.
Thank you.
So, now with COVID, and to prevent, further spread of the virus, many so-called experts have advised mask wearing for the general public. Do you support that? And if not, how do you suggest we mandate to stop the spread of COVID-19?
I think the CDC guidelines, on balance, have been pretty good over the course of the from the beginning. So what I favor is doing what we need to do to prevent the transmission. I think a nationwide order is not something that I would agree with. I think that the states are different, and different parts of the state obviously have different considerations. But we should be urging people to comply with the CDC guidelines. I think they've been sound and sensible. We've chosen a course as a country, and that course is, hopefully we're reaching the end of it because of the Project Warp Speed. Looks like it's delivering vaccines and cures that will help us get through by 2021. And so, having taken it this far, I think we ought to see it through. And to the extent that there's guidance from the state, I think we have to follow that guidance. If people disagree with it, we should advocate for changes. I favor opening up the economy or keeping things opened up as much as possible. But we do need a set of rules. It is dangerous. Hundreds of thousands of people have died in the United States because of it. And I think we're best served at this point just following through with the plan, keeping distance every time we can, wearing masks when we're in public and near other people, and limiting unnecessary physical contact until we're through the woods.
I agree. Now, talking about vaccine, would you take a vaccine when distributed to the public?
I wouldn't answer any question hypothetically. I've taken vaccines historically, so I don't have an aversion to vaccines categorically, but I will look at what the medicine is at the time and what the research shows.
I agree.
Absolutely. I definitely think it's something that we need to, wait on. I personally would definitely not be the first person in line to, receive a vaccine. But to step away and look at...
But that said, I mean, I trust, as a general matter, I have a high level of trust in the FDA, and if it's approved, I'm highly likely to take it. Right. So I would expect that I would take it, but I wouldn't. Obviously, it's speculative at this point, unless and until it's released and approved and available to us.
Absolutely, Kevin. And to just, look at COVID from a more international standpoint, as many people know, COVID-19 has come from China, or as I like to call them, the Chinese Communist Party. Do you think once this incident is over, the Chinese Communist Party should face some sort of repercussions for allowing the escape of the virus?
I think, yes, I think we need to understand what happened, and to the extent they're culpable, I think that we probably don't have leverage in terms of doing things to them, but we do have soft power. And I think the most important thing that we can do is try to understand what happened, why it happened, and who's responsible. And if we shed light on that information, hopefully that will influence how people view our relationship with anybody that's acted improperly.
I agree with you. It seems most Democrats feel as if they're not, saying anything about it coming from China. They're just complaining that it's all Donald Trump's fault. He handled it, wrongly. And, speaking of handling the virus, I just got this from Senator Markey when you guys had your debate. He said, "I would give Donald Trump a complete failing grade for the way in which he handled the coronavirus. He's been criminally negligent since January." Me, personally, I disagree with that comment. President Trump took early action to cut travel off from China. He built the lower world's largest testing system from nothing, mobilizing public and private sectors to secure needed supplies, negotiating and launching the Paycheck Protection Program, which helped save 51 million American jobs. What is your opinion on the Trump administration's response to COVID-19? Do you think there's
those are all positive things that I think that were done well. I think that the where I would fault them is inconsistent messaging and lack of comforting. That just sort of the consistent message that this is a serious concern and that we're all in this together. And the president isn't alone in terms of politicizing this issue, but these sort of national crises do represent an opportunity to bring us together, and I don't know if that was always done as well as it could have been done.
Kevin, again, yes.
And then the inconsistent messaging regarding wearing the masks and things of that nature. I think there was some defiance that wasn't warranted in some public places, but there the PPP, the project, the Warp Speed, there were a number of things as well.
Kevin, once again, I applaud how you don't necessarily take the stance of what your party has to say. You do tend to, at least from what I've seen tonight, have some criticism. The severity of it, depending, but you do seem to have the ability to criticize both parties, on their shortcomings, and I think that's a wonderful thing that we need to see more of, as we move on in the future.
And to work with people on both. So I said throughout my campaign that I would be committed to the people of Massachusetts, and I meant that I believe on balance that Republican Party's emphasis on public safety, sound education, constitutional protections of our liberties, and free market economics and a strong America. That's the best path for all Americans, regardless whether it's the inner city, rural America, or in between. That's the best path for the American people, and I strongly believe that. But both parties have make mistakes. Both parties have internal frictions that can be counterproductive. So as a senator, I would always be pledged to serving the people of Massachusetts, and that was the basis of my campaign. I don't know that the message always got through, but that's how I would have conducted myself as a senator. And I see now that there is a critical block of senators who are in the middle, centrists, who I think I could have worked with very effectively and helped deliver for Massachusetts better than Senator Markey will. I always asked throughout the campaign, do you think we'd be better off with Senator Warren and Senator Markey in the Democratic caucus and no representation in the Republican caucus? Or do you think we'd be better off with Senator Warren in the Democratic caucus and Senator O'Connor in the Republican caucus to deliver for Massachusetts in terms of the federal budget and federal resources? I think the answer is pretty clear, and I would have been a collaborator, a problem solver, and an independent thinker.
I agree with you, and I mean, Senator Markey's someone who impulsively supports defunding the police, which I think is very impulsive, in my opinion. Continuing on with COVID, with the surge in Massachusetts and as many other states we see, I know in the debate you said you don't support a mask mandate. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't support a mask mandate. I think that there are mask mandates locally, and those are appropriate. But a nationwide mask mandate, I don't know that that's advisable.
Now, how do you think we could, limit and, stop this surge that is happening currently?
I don't know. I think if anyone had any magic answer, we would be seeing that somewhere. I think we do need to wear masks. I think we do need to distance. I think we need to wash our hands and practice sound hygiene. And I think we need to do everything we can to the extent we can engage in remote activity. But we have to keep our economy going too. And we have to always be mindful that there are entire spheres of the economy that are based on physical interaction. And those spheres of the economy, those are small businesses, family-owned businesses, people, blue-collar workers who work with their hands and their bodies, waiters, waitresses, busboys. Those are wonderful jobs, wonderful people. They're critical. Tourism, these are just incredible assets for Massachusetts, and we have to support them. We've made a plan to shut things down. That means I think that we need to provide the resources and payroll protection funding and small business support to get them through. And we need to be doing everything we can to open up safely as soon as possible.
I agree with you, Kevin. Speaking of, the economy, especially in Massachusetts, suffering because of this virus, Governor Baker, who many Republicans consider him to be, a Democrat in disguise,
Republican by name.
Exactly. I believe they call it a rhino. How do you feel about his handling of COVID-19? Do you support what he has done so far, or do you have any critiques for him? Or,
well, I think he's been an excellent governor. He's done an excellent job. I think when they rolled out the shutdown, some of the messaging wasn't clear, and I think on balance been more oriented toward.
ladies and gentlemen, I believe we have technical difficulties.
Oh, we got him back, I think.
Did you see me? Hello.
We got you.
Hello.
We got you.
There you are.
We got you back.
Yeah. But I mean, so I think he's gotten high marks from the people of Massachusetts for the job he's done, and ultimately that's the measure, right? People want to know that they're safe, and they want us to get through this as efficiently as possible. And the people of Massachusetts, I think, support on balance what he's done. I want to make sure that our local businesses, our small businesses are protected. I think that the set of rules that have been imposed as a general matter have favored big box stores. And this is not just in Massachusetts, this is across the country. I think they've been too hard on religious gatherings, and they favored big businesses over small business and local business. And so those are things that I certainly would be advocating. I'd be advocating for small business and local business.
Again, Kevin, I agree with you, on your stance on small businesses, focusing on them over these big retailers, which many governors and states have been doing. But something else specifically, with Governor Baker's administration and other administrations across the country, travel mandates, specifically with 14-day quarantines after visiting relatives in other states. How do you feel about that? Do you support that?
Well, if it's based on the science, I think that the governor has at all times tried to base what he's done on scientific guidance. So I think he's on balance been consistent with CDC guidelines, and he has been very communicative overall and done the best he can with a very, very difficult situation.
Thank you, Kevin. And just one more question before we wrap up COVID. There has been a surge recently in Massachusetts. Do you have any theories on why there may have been a surge?
I think it's cold weather. I don't know about you guys. I felt like there's cold and flu season. We know when it is, right? It starts in the late fall and it goes through into the spring. And our immune systems, for whatever reason, are compromised. And it seems like the surge is coinciding with that.
And I think we could see that too, when at the beginning of the summer, knowing that there could be another surge outbreak, heading into the winter days, that, it could be, like Vice President Biden said, it could be a dark winter ahead of us. But hopefully.
Yeah, it's a tough, but I think the main thing is that we are where we are right now. And we chose a course and as a country, and we're close to getting through. The vaccines are coming, the cures are coming, and so I think at this point we've called the play. We've got to run the play and see it through, and that's the best path to getting our economy opened up as soon as possible.
I think I speak for Joey when I say, we agree with you immensely on that. And to wrap up COVID and move on, speaking of Americans going through hard times, we are, somewhat going through a civil rights crisis right now, specifically with the Black Lives Matter and defund or defend the police movement going on. How do you feel about the Black Lives Matter organization?
Well, I am concerned about the organization in terms of I believe Black Lives Matter, and I have spent my entire career as a lawyer in pursuit of justice. I became a lawyer because I believe in justice and equal treatment under the law for all. And so to the extent Black Lives Matter reflects objection to injustice along racial lines, that part of the message I share. I'm concerned about it, as I think most Americans are. The organization itself has historically done a few things that I disagree with. It's advocated against the Western concept of the nuclear family. It's advocated for socialist economic principles, and the organization historically has been extremely insensitive about police killings. And there have been Black Lives Matter protests or demonstrations that celebrated the killing of police officers. And so those sort of things are just totally unacceptable. But I think most Americans want to make sure that our justice system is fair, that our police officers are fair. I think in Massachusetts, we have wonderful police departments on balance. They're not perfect, just like our voting. They're not perfect, and so we need to make sure that the public and all communities have faith in our judicial system, and we have to have confidence that police who act out of line are disciplined or removed as appropriate, and that no one suffers injustice based on race. But I don't in any way believe that the answer or the way to achieve that objective is by defunding the police. I absolutely disagree with that. So Senator Tim Scott in the Senate offered a police reform bill that I think would have been very constructive. I said during the campaign I favored that. I think there's a good effort going on in Massachusetts. The governor's been very constructive in terms of working on police reform in a collaborative manner with all relevant constituent groups. And I'm optimistic that something good, something very positive will come out of that. But I'm quite sure that the answer won't come in cutting police funding.
No, of course not. And that just means cutting police funding means, crime rates will increase, And, backing up to the Black Lives Matter thing, I agree with the concept that Black lives do matter. Of course they do, just like every life matters. But the issue I'm having here is the violence that is portrayed in these movements, and the funding that they're taking is not going to the correct places. I personally have attended a few, Back the Blue rallies, and they have been great. There's been nice people there, lots of support, and not really any violence that, from my understanding. And I was considering going to a Black Lives Matter, protest, but the reason why I didn't was because, I'm scared because, as a Republican, I support Trump, and according to all the BLM people, that's a sin to them. That's not okay. And, I'm kind of scared to go to one. Like I said, though, I agree with the concept, but it's just, what they're doing is not okay.
Well, yeah, groups can act out of line and individuals can act out of line. I actually had a really nice moment on the campaign where I went to a Back the Blue rally, and there was a counter demonstration that was put on by Black Lives Matter, and the leader of the Back the Blue rally and the leader of the Black Lives Matter, the two groups had become friends over the course of their respective demonstrations across the street. And so the leader of the Back the Blue rally got us together. And I had a great talk with the person who was the head of the Black Lives Matter group. This was out in Western Mass. And he said, we want to be brought together. So I think for most people, there are people on the extremes that want to divide us, but most people, and certainly in the Back to Blue rallies that I've attended, have been completely appropriate. And I think that sentiment is totally appropriate. I believe that Black Lives Matter. I believe, and I will always stand up against racial injustice, but that organization, I believe, has taken some pretty extreme positions that put me at odds with it on some issues. The organization, I believe, has modified its website in response to criticism, so that's a good positive step. But we want to get to a place where there's justice for all Americans. I agree. And there's confidence in our judicial system. And getting there in 2020 has been really rough, but we got to stay at it and try to reach a consensus. And I don't believe that I have gone over, and if I've seen a Black Lives Matter protest, I generally made a point of going over and speaking to people and shaking hands. And when I did that, I found people to be civil and appropriate.
I agree with you. And just the fact that you said, the two groups came together and you guys were friends, that's what I love to see, that peace and that happiness between both, demonstrators, like movements coming together as one, knowing that, we don't have to spew out hatred. We can spread love as one country.
Yeah. I mean, the path forward is supporting our officers who put their lives on the line and who proceed at enormous risk. It's so tough to be a police officer. We need to be mindful and respectful of their experience. And we need to recognize that police departments, like a lot of organizations in society, have areas where they need to improve upon. And we can hold those thoughts simultaneously. One thing that I think has been unfortunate this year in 2020 is that I think the police have been the target of a lot of criticism that I think is more fairly spread across all sectors of society. And I think I said this during the debate. Senator Markey's advocated a set of social programs in his 44 years in Congress that have not served the inner city family well, have not served the Black family well. And so the focus on the police is to I believe, try to divert attention away from failed social policies and failed educational policies that are hurting African-American families across the country. And this is not a problem that is concentrated entirely on our police. We have enormous inequities in our educational outcomes. Police have nothing to do with that. That is the product of the educational systems that we have around the country. And I think the same thing with a lot of social programs that have led to the breakdown of the American family and have not been constructive. So there's plenty of blame to go around. The way forward is for people to try to come together, reach common ground, and work collaboratively and always work peacefully.
Kevin, just lastly, before we move on from civil rights, I agree with you completely, that people of color, their lives do matter very, very much. And I also think that the majority of Americans from both sides of the movement, like you said, do not want, to be divisive. They want to get along, and I believe they do get along. But unfortunately, in America and across the world, it's the extremists who unfortunately have, most of the speaking time. Now, those extremists, from both sides of the aisle, seem to, or at least from the Black Lives Matter side, seem to criminalize Republicans and conservatives and, specifically President Trump. Even though there seems to be a severe lack of evidence to do so, why do you think that they seem to hate the right so much?
Oh, I think that there's probably a variety of reasons. It's a big organization, and I think there are any number of explanations. I live in a town where there are Black Lives Matter signs up. My neighbors have them, and I go through other towns. And I think the people that have those signs up are good people. And I think most of the people that are at demonstrations in support of that cause are good people. What usually happens is at night, the agitators come out, and there's a group certainly Antifa, I think, is a terrible group, and there may be people that come out and are trying to operate under other banners and doing improper things. But I think that on balance, most people in the United States want justice for all Americans. And politicians on the extreme side of any issue always can peddle vilification of the other side. And then someone like President Trump, who's defiant, who thrives on conflict, is obviously an easy target, and he embraces it, and he gained from it politically at times, and then at times it was politically disadvantageous. But I think you're always going to see extremists, unfortunately, attacking the motives of the other side.
We both agree with you 100% on that. Drifting away from civil rights, a big sensitive issue is abortion. It's big when it comes to a woman. Their body, their choice. In your opinion, what is your stance on abortion, and what is your thoughts on the Supreme Court case Roe v. Wade?
Well, I'm pro-choice. I believe that the Roe versus Wade structure is the law of the land, and I think that that's what most Americans want to be the law of the land. So I think that stability on that issue, which allows people to advocate on each side, and to the extent people want to promote practices other than abortion, I'm fully respectful of that. I'm respectful of religious beliefs, but I think for most people, that is the settled, or not for most people, that is the settled law of the land, and I think we need to proceed on that basis.
Absolutely. I believe, I respect your opinion. We may have our differences here and there, but that's with all political parties, and I think it's great that we can still sit down, and hold these conversations and get along the way we do. I believe Joey wanted to push us into our next topic.
Yes, our next topic is, fun questions, or as Richard would like to say, I have corny questions.
Oh boy.
So I guess my first fun question for you is, I believe I read something that said you played football in high school. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Now, are the Patriots your team? Do you watch football often? Is that your sport?
Yeah, I love football. Yes, I root for the Patriots.
Do you think that the Patriots can, clinch a spot in the playoffs this year, hopefully?
No. I think last night's loss was a pretty tough loss.
Yes.
And now me, I'm personally a big history person. I don't know about yourself. But, when it comes to role models for yourself or even past presidents, do you have a significant role model or favorite past president that you would like to mention?
Abraham Lincoln, I think, and he was someone who was extremely thoughtful. I think the Gettysburg Address is the most incredible speech ever written. He understood the importance of the economy of words, and he conducted himself with grace and dignity during the most difficult times. Was a tremendous leader in a crisis, and believed in the best principles of American democracy, including liberty and justice and freedom for all Americans.
I agree with you 100%. I was a big fan of President Lincoln's, morals, his, some of the decisions he had. I was big on him.
And he's a great wartime president too. Right. So the victory in the Civil War was not a foregone conclusion. And we were not performing well, and he made very good management decisions in terms of elevating generals like General Grant, who were high performers, and removing generals and replacing generals who were not getting the job done. And then when the war was over, he was thoughtful in terms of bringing the country together.
I agree, and I think lots of people don't really look into that. They there's lots of things go around that say, oh, Abraham Lincoln is a racist, but I don't think people really take a look at it seriously. I mean, if you look at presidents like James Buchanan, Woodrow Wilson, these are more racist presidents who have, racist pasts and things that they've done that have segregated against different communities.
Yeah, every president is a product of his or her time, just as if we looked at other countries and what other leaders did during their time, you would find imperfection, right? So it's always important for in the United States to look and think who has a better history, who has more to be proud of. And I think in the context of the world that Abraham Lincoln lived in, he made the world a better place. He operated based on principles. He was humane. He was thoughtful. He was not perfect. And he was limited by his times. But if every president performed in his or her time the way Abraham Lincoln performed in his moments, we'd be a much better country. And so I think he's an extraordinary talent, a person of extraordinary character. Again, he was not perfect, and he certainly said and expressed regrettable thoughts. But I believe they were a product of his times, and not a reflection of his overall character.
I agree. With a few minutes that we have left here, my last question for you is, taking a quick look into the distant future of the election of 2024. In your opinion, who do you think would be a great candidate for the Republican Party? Do you think you would see Donald Trump run again, or Senator Ted Cruz? Who is someone that you would like to see in 24?
Well, the people I like from afar, I like Nikki Haley. She seems like she'd be a very strong candidate, very sensible person. I've met Dan Crenshaw. I was impressed with him, and he's got an extraordinary background. So those would be the two people who would come to mind most immediately for me.
I guess we'll just have to wait and see for the future to see what happens.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. Lastly, to wrap us up, I think the big elephant in the room, how about yourself, the 2024 election? Are we going to see O'Connor run again?
Oh, I don't know. Anybody that runs a campaign well has the support of his or her family. It's really hard to not do that. And so my family was incredible during 2020 in this campaign. And so any decision about my future will be a family decision. And so we're focused on getting our holiday shopping done and our cards out. And what you can expect is that I'll be involved publicly, and I'll be committed to trying to make sure that Massachusetts is a strong state that is inclusive and as prosperous as possible, and a great place. It continues to be a great place to live, and so I will be involved in public affairs, I'm sure. But how exactly that plays out is yet to be seen.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And all I can say is if you do run again, you will have my vote, and Richard will be old enough.
Absolutely.
You'll have his vote too.
Thank you.
And, right before we end here, I guess my last question to be is, just in a quick summary, what is to you the biggest issue as a country that we are facing?
Well, I think it's the dual challenge of maintaining freedom and liberty in a world that where technology will make control and our most formidable adversary, China, it will give them opportunity. It will give China opportunities to strengthen, and it will give people who don't support liberty more opportunity to control us. So the real challenge is kind of harnessing the benefits of technology responsibly. And they're tremendous. We have the capacity and the potential to have our best days ahead of us between artificial intelligence and quantum computing, things of that nature. But the challenge is harnessing that and making sure that those tools are not used to compromise our freedoms.
I agree with you. And just before we wrap up, once this surge, dials down a little bit, we'd love for you to come down to the studio. I'd love to, formally
Absolutely.
meet you in person as well.
Yes. Yeah, I'd like to meet you both.
Mr. O'Connor, I'm sorry to cut you off, but unfortunately we are running out of time. We'll see you in the future. My name is Richard Silvio.
My name is Joey Bigos.
And this has been Kevin O'Connor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Hey guys,